Hi students, how are you all? Hope all of you are fine and following all the precautionary norms. Namely, when you are going out, you are wearing mask, you are washing your hands with soaps, using sanitizer. Please take care of your health because you are the future. You are our hope. You are our future scientist, technocrat, industrialist. So your life is very important. See, well, when we departed on 16th March, I was teaching you the fourth unit. Fourth unit is about polarization. So it was at the fag end. I mean, my teaching was at the fag end. Just two topics were yet to be completed. At that time, I left. So what I'll do is, since there is a long gap, so let me again revise in brief what all I taught so far, and also briefly I will explain. I have already made notes for you, brief notes. I will explain once again, then I will teach you that particular topic, that last two topics. Well, polarization, as you know, I taught you in the class. Before polarization, you have studied interference, you have studied diffraction. It just speaks about that light is propagating from one point to another point as a wave. It is a wave motion. Light is a wave motion. Of course, there is a interference, diffraction, those phenomena you have studied, how you get interference phenomena and diffraction phenomena, but it doesn't speak about the nature of light, whether it is a transverse vibration or longitudinal vibration. It does not speak about that. So this particular phenomena, polarization, based on this effect of polarization, you will be know what is the nature of light, why it has transverse nature. So longitudinal and transverse vibration of light will be known by polarization. So as you know, polarization is nothing but it is restricting the light to vibrate in a particular direction. You know that light vibrates in all directions. It can have any direction, it can vibrate in any plane, but we restrict normally to our technical usage, perpendicular and parallel vibration. So if you restrict the light to vibrate in any particular plane, let's say X plane or Y plane, by some technique, so this phenomena is called as polarization. And you know, polarization effect, it can be produced by either reflection, refraction, scattering, double refraction, etc. So as far as polarization, producing polarization effect by reflection, we have studied initially. It was started by Molus, and then that polarization effect was extensively studied by Brewster's. So you know what is Brewster's law. So what he has done, he has taken several reflecting surfaces, and whenever light is incidenting on these plane surfaces, whether maybe water or some polished surface, so when he studied the reflected and the refracted light at a particular angle of incidence, he observed that the reflected and the refracted light is 100% plane polarized. One vibration is in the plane section of that particular whatever medium, and another is perpendicular section. It can be from air to glass. Okay, so and he also observed that the angle between the reflected and the refracted wave is they are perpendicular to each other, that is 90 degree. Okay, so then we moved on to what is Molus law. Molus law is nothing but you have a, after you produce a polarized light with the help of some prism. We use either a nickel prism, or you can use a calcite crystal, or you can use a quartz crystal and all. So when you produce this particular plane polarized light by let's say nickel prism, so what happened? So the first prism will produce it will make the light to vibrate in a particular plane. So he called it as a polarizer, and then it will be analyzed. This polarizer, okay, the light which is incidenting on the polarizer, suppose its amplitude is suppose A, and it has been verified by another prism. It is called analyzer, whether the light is polarized or not. So the amount of light which is passing through the analyzer, okay, so it is the intensity is actually square of cosine of the angle theta between the plane of polarizer and the analyzer. So that we have studied in what you call Mauler's law, and there is a experiment also we do in the lab. And then we have studied the phenomena of double refraction. So there are some again crystals, calcite, you can tourmaline, or any crystal you can take. So whenever I mean this it has got some property, anisotropic property, that is its physical properties will change when the light is passing through that particular medium. So when the light is passing through that particular medium, tourmaline or whatever crystal we take, it will there will be the light will be refracted 2 times. It will be doubly refracted. One vibration will be in the principal section of that crystal, another will be vibrating perpendicular to the direction of the crystal. So this particular phenomena is called as double refraction. And okay, so this double refraction we have studied, and then we moved on to nickel prism, construction of nickel prism. What is a nickel prism? It's a device which can be used as a polarizer or an analyzer. So basically the construction is like this. You take a nickel prism whose length is 3 times its breadth, and you cut it along the diagonal, and then you polish it on all sides, and then especially at that cut side you polish, you grind, and then you actually put a Canada balsam layer. So that Canada balsam layer refractive index is in between the refractive index of the let's say ordinary light and the extraordinary light. It is a double refraction. Whenever light passes through this crystal, the light will be doubly refracted. One will be ordinary light whose vibration is perpendicular to the plane section, other vibration is in the plane section. So that doubly refracted light, its refractive index will be different. Refractive index of ordinary light will be actually more than the refractive index of the extraordinary light. So that how it is that we found out. So this Canada balsam refractive index will be in between refractive index of ordinary and extraordinary. So for with respect to refractive index of ordinary, the refractive index of Canada balsam will be rarer. To this ordinary will be denser, and with respect to extraordinary it will be denser. So by the technique of total internal reflection, at the Canada balsam layer it will be refracted inside by the technique of total internal reflection, this ordinary light, and it will be absorbed by the device. Only the extraordinary light will be allowed to pass through. So we can use this nickel prism as a device for producing a plane polarized light, polarizer as well as analyzer. Then we have moved, we studied what is this how you produce a elliptically polarized light or plane polarized light or circularly polarized light. So again the same technique, we cut this calcite crystal, that thickness will be parallel to optic axis, and when you pass this light through it, then it will be doubly refracting. Suppose we imagine the ordinary light to be along the x-axis direction and extraordinary light along the y direction, and then suppose A is the amplitude of the incident light, so that amplitude will be resolved into two components. A cos theta will be in the direction of ordinary, and A sin theta will be direction of the extraordinary, and then as if two simple harmonic motions is subjected to a particle, and then we have two equations. X is equal to, let's say, A cos theta sin omega t plus del, and y is equal to, let's say, A sin theta sin omega t. Del is the phase difference between this extraordinary and ordinary light, and then we eliminate t and we get a equation of oblique ellipse, and then by putting the condition of that particular del to be 0 or pi by 2 or pi by 2 plus A is equal to B, we get plane polarized light, circularly polarized light, and elliptically polarized light. It can be proved experimentally also. And then so this phenomena we studied, and then the topics what we have to study is that you have to know what is optical activity and what is Lorentz half-shade polarimeter. So briefly, optical activity is nothing but once we produce a plane polarized light, there are certain optically active substance. You can take again quartz and then sugar solution, and there are certain substances, tourmaline substances, which will what will happen is when light passes through them, whatever plane polarized light, it will rotate the plane of that plane polarized light. You imagine, suppose there is a string like that and you put clips. Suppose when you are drying your clothes, you put clips, and then you hold the string at both ends and you try to rotate. So clips, what will happen, one part of clips will be on the one plane, and other part of the clip will be in another plate, exactly like that. So there is a certain property of crystal that it will try to rotate the plane of plane polarized light. This phenomena is called optical activity. Of course, it depends upon what is the concentration of that substance, and what is the thickness, what is the length, what is the concentration, and what is the wavelength of the incident light. So based on this particular, and it can rotate some substance, it rotates towards the right, and some rotate towards the left. One is dextro-rotatory, one is levo-rotatory. So basically this particular phenomena we use to design actually an instrument called as polarimeter. Okay, polarimeter is nothing but we actually use this polarimeter to find out what is the angle of rotation of this plane polarized light, how much this polarized light been rotated, the plane being rotated. So this phenomena we studied, and one specific instrument we use when we find out the concentration of sugar solution, the same instrument we call it as saturimeter. It is there in our lab. We will be doing experiment with the help of this saturimeter, which measures the concentration. You can also use to measure the concentration of a sugar solution, and also you can measure how much the incoming particular plane polarized light, the plane being rotated. And this has been used in all distilleries to find out, because different field, different yield of sugarcane will come, especially when you go to Shirdi, and from Shirdi when you are going to Shani Shignapuri, you will be seeing all bullock carts. So many bullock carts you will carrying those sugar canes, and each yield will be having different concentration. So the best yield will be considered for in the distilleries. So this is a very important, and drug manufacturing also, all tablets manufacturing also, this polarimeter we will be using. So basically, I mean, I will explain you how we are using it. So you have to make different concentration solution, and then how it is actually that rotation and concentration, how you are measuring that, I will explain you in detail after some time. And the last topic is Babnet compensator. Actually, this is also a device. Actually, normally I also taught you what is a quarter wave plate and a half wave plate. So quarter wave plate is nothing but same calcite crystal. When you cut the crystal, the thickness is parallel to its optic axis. So whenever this light is passing through this what do you call this calcite cut some thickness cut crystal, so ordinary and double refraction takes place, and ordinary and extraordinary ray will be produced. And inside even though both the ray will be traveling in the same direction, this extraordinary ray which will travel faster than the ordinary ray. And I told you why the name extraordinary and why ordinary. Ordinary ray means it will obey the laws of refraction and all, and its velocity will be normally same in all directions. Extraordinary means it will not follow these laws of refraction, its velocity will be more in different directions. So anyhow, so there will be a phase difference between this ordinary and extraordinary ray. So whenever the phase difference between ordinary and extraordinary ray is pi by 2, when it is passing through a calcite crystal, then there will be a path difference of lambda by 4 between the extraordinary and ordinary ray, that is called quarter wave plate. And then we find out the path difference, and then we equate to I mean, you know, the phase difference is 2 pi by lambda into path difference, and then you can find out the thickness of that particular crystal by using the refractive index of ordinary and extraordinary. Same thing half wave plate, when the phase difference is pi, corresponding to a phase difference is pi, corresponds to a path difference of lambda by 2, so that will be half wave plate. Anyhow, so this Babnet compensator, you know, depending upon the thickness of this plate, you know, for a particular wavelength of incident light, we design a quarter wave plate, okay, to find out the phase difference or path difference between ordinary and extraordinary light. The precaution is the incident light should have single monochrome, single wavelength. But if the wavelength of the incident light changes, then we have to have, I mean, we have to use different thickness calcite crystal, okay, which I mean, at some time, you know, it is very tedious and all. So Babnet compensator is nothing but you wedge shaped like this, two pieces of calcite crystal we join, and then at one end we slide one wedge calcite crystal over the other, so that the thickness will be adjusted and its plane will be perpendicular to each other, so that we adjust the thickness and then we compensate the different wavelength of light. That I will explain you in detail after some time. So that is what is about the fourth unit. Now let me explain you little bit briefly. Well, students, so first again let me start from the beginning. Polarization of light waves. So it's a rough diagram I have drawn. So these are two tourmaline crystals, okay. So these are its plane. This plane is actually this particular axis is parallel to each other, okay. Now ordinary light means it will have vibrations in all directions, and for convenience we take only two direction. This double arrow means the vibration is in the plane section of this particular paper, and dot means the vibration is in the perpendicular section. So suppose this is the first tourmaline crystal P1 and this is P2. So this particular crystal P1, okay, will allow the light to pass through whose vibration is parallel to this particular axis. Okay, so crystal planes are perpendicular to the, and this crystal plane will be perpendicular to the direction of propagation of light. Okay, this crystal plane, so only that particular light vibration will be allowed to pass through this particular crystal whose vibration is parallel to this particular axis, and the same will be passed through P2. So eventually we are able to separate this vibration. So this is plane polarized light, and when you keep the axis of this tourmaline crystal, second one, parallel to this, then it will also allow the light to pass through. So this is a polarized light of maximum intensity. One thing we have to remember, that this is perpendicular to the direction of the incoming light. Now in the experiment, when we rotate this P2, suppose this P2 is rotated through 90 degree, that is the plane of P2, this plane of P2, that crystallographic plane of P2 is perpendicular to P1. In that case, the intensity of light will be minimum, that is no light, because this is in cross section. Okay, which proves that the light is a transverse wave motion. Light has got transverse property, that it will not allow when this plane is perpendicular to this plane. Okay, after passing through the shows that light is a transverse wave motion. Light, after passing through the first crystal P1, the light vibrates only in one direction, that is, it is polarized at it. It has acquired the property of one-sidedness. I mean this part. So once it is this ordinary light which is having vibration in all direction is passing through this crystal, only double arrow coming. A double arrow means its vibration is in the plane section of this paper. So we are able to restrict the light to vibrate in a particular plane. So restricting, confining, compelling the light to vibrate only in one direction is called as polarization. And these are some of the representation they may ask in any competitive exam. This is unpolarized light. Unpolarized means double arrow and dot. Double arrow means vibration. These two are plane polarized light. Double arrow means vibrations are parallel to the plane of the paper. Dot means vibration perpendicular to the plane of paper. Anywhere you see only double arrow means it is plane polarized light. Plane section of that particular crystal or paper. And only dot means it is also plane polarized light, but vibration perpendicular to the paper. So this is how we produce polarized light. Now next, you have to know what is the plane of vibration, what is the plane of polarization, what is the direction of propagation. Actually there will be a plane of vibration. I told you, this double arrow, this is vibrating parallel to this particular plane. Okay, so this particular is a plane of vibration. And just like transverse vibration is whenever the particle vibrate perpendicular to the direction of wave propagation. This is the direction of wave propagation. This is in the plane of this plane of vibration. Plane of vibration is this one, and this direction of propagation is in the plane of vibration. So a plane which is passing through the intersection of this plane of vibration and direction of propagation is the plane of polarization. So understood? The plane which is passing through the intersection of the plane of vibration and the plane direction of propagation is the plane of polarization. So plane of polarization will not have any vibration. Okay, so this is how suppose if they ask in plane of polarization will there be any vibration, you have to say the plane which has no vibration is known as plane of polarization. So a plane passing through the direction of propagation and perpendicular to the plane of polarization is known as plane of vibration is known as plane of polarization. That is this one. This is intersecting this line and this particular plane. Now methods of polarization. So polarization, as I told you, It can be produced by reflection, refraction, double refraction. So first let us study polarization by that is Brewster's law. So 1811, actually before that Moeller started in 1808, but 1811 he actually got this result. He performed a number of experiments to study the polarization of light by reflection, different surfaces. He observed that for a particular angle of incidence known as the angle of polarization, the reflected light is completely polarized in the plane of incidence and having plane of vibration perpendicular to the plane of incidence. And also he proved that tangent of angle of polarization P is equal to the refractive index of that medium. Mu is equal to tan P, and the reflected and the refracted rays are perpendicular to each other. See, suppose you take this is as some let's say glass, okay, and this is air. This is glass and this is, let's say, air. This is unpolarized light. Unpolarized light means double arrow and dot. Double arrow and dot. So this is the angle of incidence. So this is the result after the experiment. At a particular angle known, this is actually angle of incidence, but we are writing it P. P means angle of polarization. The reflected and the refracted light is 100% plane polarized. In this case, the vibration is perpendicular to the plane section of this particular paper, but it is in the plane of incidence, just like your XY plane. Your XY plane, this is in the plane of this incidence, okay, but vibration will be perpendicular to this particular plane of incidence, okay. Similarly, the refracted ray will be also 100% plane polarized. His vibration will be in the plane section of this particular slab, glass slab. So this is angle of refraction and this is polarization. So as angle of incidence is equal to angle of reflection, this is P means this is also P. So now this is he has taken different surfaces, different medium, and then he concluded that the refractive index of this medium, let's suppose glass medium, is equal to tangent of the polarizing angle. Polarizing angle is P, okay. So now we have to prove that this reflected ray and the refracted ray, they subtend, they are perpendicular to each other, that is angle between them is 90 degrees. So we follow this, mu is equal to tan P, let's say this is equation 1, and we know Snell's law. Snell's law is nothing but, you know, mu is equal to sin I by sin R, okay, sin I. So as I was telling you, Brewster's law, this is one finding, mu is equal to tan P, okay, and that is refractive index of this particular medium is equal to tangent of the polarizing angle. Actually it is, you know that refractive index is sin I by sin R. So Snell's law, mu is equal to I is nothing but this P, angle of incidence. So sin P by sin R. This is Snell's law. Now we equate this. So therefore mu is equal to tan P according to Brewster's law, and according to Snell's law, mu is equal to sin I by sin R. In place of I you have to put P because angle of incidence is angle of polarization. So you equate 1 and 2. So therefore if you equate 1 and 2, left hand side is equal, right hand side is nothing but tan P is equal to sin P by sin R, or tan P is nothing but sin P by cos P is equal to sin P by sin R. So this cancels. So or sin R is equal to cos P. So cos P you can write it as sin 90 minus P. This is equal to sin R, or R is equal to pi by 2 minus P or r plus p is equal to pi by 2. So now suppose if this line total angle is 180 degree, this particular line, this is the normal. Suppose total angle is 180 degree, suppose this r, this angle plus this angle p is 90. So therefore 180 minus 90 will be 90. So therefore angle between the refracted ray and the angle between the reflected ray and the refracted ray will be 90 degree, because this r and this p is 90. So therefore this will be 90. So it is proved now. Next is Morley's law. Morley's law, as you told you, that suppose if this is plane of analyzer, and if this is plane of polarizer, and suppose A is the maximum angle. So 1809 Morley discovered this law regarding how much light will be transmitted through this analyzer. According to him, the intensity of the polarized light which is transmitted through the analyzer varies as the square of the cosine of the angle theta between the plane of transmission of the analyzer and the plane of polarizer. Think that this is polarizer and this is analyzer. So angle between them is theta. So you have to take cos square theta. So if you take OP as A, be the amplitude of the incident plane polarized light, the light which is incidenting on the polarizer, okay, and theta be the angle between the plane of polarizer and the analyzer, then this A is resolved into two components. A cos theta will be in the direction of analyzer and A sin theta will be perpendicular to the direction of analyzer. So this is important, A cos theta. So the component A cos theta is transmitted through the analyzer. So intensity of the transmitted light through the analyzer is equal to A cos theta whole square, that is A square cos square theta. You know intensity of square of amplitude. So if you take I to be the original intensity of incident polarized light, so in place of A square you can put I. So I theta will be I cos square theta. That means that I theta is proportional to cos square theta. So this can be proved experimentally. In experiment, suppose if you put theta is equal to 0, that is two planes are parallel. Suppose this plane comes and becomes parallel to this plane. Then what will happen? Cos theta is equal to 1. So you will be getting the maximum light will be passed through the analyzer. Suppose if the angle between this polarizer, plane of polarizer and analyzer is 90 pi by 2, 90 degree, then no light will come out and the intensity will be 0. Okay, so this is what is Morley's law we have studied. Then let's say we study double refraction. Double refraction, as I told you before, you have to take an anisotropic substance. Anisotropic substance is different from an isotropic substance because here the physical properties are different in different direction. You can take crystal of calcite, quartz and tourmaline. Physical properties here they are different in different direction. So in 1869, his name is Erasmus Bartholinus. He discovered that when a beam of ordinary light, ordinary unpolarized light, is passed through a calcite crystal, the refracted light splits up into two refracted rays. One which always obeys the ordinary laws of refraction and having vibration perpendicular to the principal section is known as ordinary ray, and the perpendicular section means, as I told you, that dots. Okay, and the other does not obey the laws of refraction and having vibration in the principal section, double arrow, okay, are called ordinary light ray. So basically splitting of that unpolarized light takes place when it passes through the crystal. So this phenomena was observed by this scientist. So after that it has been named, it is a phenomena of double refraction. So those crystals are called doubly refractive crystal. So this phenomena of double refraction it can be illustrated with the following. They have illustrated it with the following ink dot experiment. What is ink dot experiment? Is in white sheet, a dot of ink is put, one dot is put, and over it a calcite crystal is put. Okay, calcite crystal or tourmaline or whatever quartz. Okay, then from the top when you see, he found two dots. Okay, so first one dot was put, and then over it a calcite crystal is put, and then when he visualized, when he saw from the top, he saw two ink dots. So then he rotated the crystal, and the crystal was rotated. Suppose it is rotated in this particular direction, anti-clockwise direction. So this ordinary ray, this dot, one dot, two dot was produced. One dot remained stationary, and the other dot started moving in the direction of rotation of the crystal. The one which is stationary is called ordinary ray, ordinary image, and the one which is rotating with the crystal is called extraordinary ray. So this is how he demonstrated, and we can also, why this extraordinary ray is traveling with more velocity than the ordinary ray, we can just use, we can find out from this particular diagram. This is again a calcite crystal drawn. Suppose a unpolarized light is incidenting on this particular section of the crystal at an angle I. So inside double refraction takes place. Double arrow and dot. Okay, double arrow and dot. You can see here. Clearly you can see here. Suppose this is a calcite crystal and this is a unpolarized light. This is unpolarized light. Unpolarized light. Because double arrow and dot both are there. At an angle I is incidenting on this section. Okay, suppose A, B, C, D, this particular section of the crystal. Inside the crystal, anisotropic crystal, it will be doubly refracted. The one whose vibration is in the plane section of the crystal is called extraordinary, and the one whose vibration in the perpendicular crystal, perpendicular to this plane section, is called ordinary ray. And suppose this is normal. The angle of extraordinary ordinary ray with respect to normal is suppose R1, and with respect to extraordinary it is R2. So then we can find out the refractive index of ordinary and extraordinary. So if you use Snell's law, ordinary is sin I by sin R1 for ordinary, because R1 is the angle between the ordinary ray with the normal. Okay, and extraordinary refractive index is sin I by sin R2. R2 is the angle between the normal and the extraordinary ray. Now here if you apply mathematics, R1 is less than R2. This R1 is less than R2. So when R1 is less than R2, denominator is less than numerator. So according to this thing, refractive index of ordinary, mathematical logic, refractive index of ordinary will be greater than refractive index of extraordinary. And you know that refractive index and the velocity is inversely proportional. So therefore velocity of ordinary will be less than velocity of extraordinary. That's why almost it is stationary, and this extraordinary is moving with more velocity because it is less. Inside the crystal, mu is same for all angle of incidence, but mu varies with the angle of incidence. So its velocity is more than ordinary. So this is the principle of double refraction. Okay, now how you construct a Nicol prism. So Nicol, scientist Nicol, he has invented this device in the year 1828. So it is basically a device to produce and analyze plane polarized light. So you can produce polarized light, and also you can analyze plane polarized light. Okay. So when again the same story, when ordinary light transmitted through a calcite crystal, it splits up into ordinary and it splits up into extraordinary beams, ray. Now if by some technique one of this ray, in this case ordinary ray, is eliminated by the technique of total internal reflection, then the emergent light only will be plane polarized. As here you can see only double arrow is coming out. So this device is able to produce plane polarized light. So it is called a polarizer. Okay, how it is done? So you take a calcite crystal and its length is 3 times its width, and the end faces are crystal are you grind it, polish it, so that you can increase the field of view of the light which is falling and the light which is coming out. The crystal is cut into two places. The cut is along the diagonal axis. The crystal is cut into two pieces, okay, by a plane perpendicular to the plane. Suppose this is the principal section. By a plane perpendicular to the principal section, the two cut pieces again they are polished, they are grounded, and they are grinded, and they are polished so that they are optically flat, and then they are cemented together. Here we put a layer of Canada balsam. A Canada balsam layer we put. So refractive index of this Canada balsam is in between ordinary and extraordinary. Its refractive index is less than ordinary and it will be more than the extraordinary. So it will act as a ray. This Canada balsam layer, this is Canada balsam layer. This Canada balsam layer acts as a rarer medium to this ordinary ray which is denser, more refractive index, and it is denser to extraordinary ray. Now here the problem comes, at what angle this ordinary ray will strike the Canada balsam layer. So again suppose if you apply the form, so here we take for sodium lines refractive index of ordinary is 1.658, extraordinary 1.55, and these are the values which are, you can refer it. Extraordinary 1.486. so you can see that this is rarer to this and it is denser to this. So now if you apply this mu is equal to refractive index of ordinary by extraordinary, okay, so and you use the formula sin c is equal to 1 by mu, you get c is equal to critical angle to be 69 degree, and you know that whenever a ray goes from a denser medium to rarer medium and it exceeds the critical angle, it will be totally internally reflected. So if this critical angle, suppose if this is critical angle, if this critical angle is more than 69 degree, then this ordinary ray will be totally internally reflected and it will be observed by that particular prism. So by this technique, and extraordinary ray you are allowing it to pass through. Okay, so by this technique you are able to produce a plane polarized light. But there is always some limitations and restrictions. Limitation is that this particular Nicol prism act as a polarizing device for slightly converging and slightly diverging incident ray, slightly converging and slightly diverging. That means that already this result is found out. Suppose the angle of incidence is less than this ABR, this particular angle at which this unpolarized light is incidenting on the surface is less than this ABR. This angle ABR is less than whatever this value, then what will happen? Slowly this refractive index of ordinary will be moving towards the refractive index of this Canada balsam layer, or after some time it will be extraordinary ray refractive index, means it will be close to this. So then what will happen? It will become smaller and smaller, and it will be first Canada balsam and then extraordinary. So if the angle is less than ABR, this totally internally reflected ray, ordinary ray, will not be totally internally refracted, but it will go other side of the prism. That is, both extraordinary and ordinary ray will come out. So this is the limitation with respect to this particular incident line. They found this angle to be 14 degree. Similarly, if this ABR is more than particular angle, then what will happen? Slowly the extraordinary ray will bend like this, and again it will be refractive index will be going towards the, or maybe will be moving towards the, or it will be close to this refractive index of the ordinary. Because this angle is more, this will bend and its refractive index will be going closer to refractive index of ordinary. The extraordinary also will be totally internally reflected. So the purpose is not solved. So we have to be very careful. This convergent and the divergent beam should be within the range of this 14 degree. So that is what for that particular specific crystal and for that particular incident light of some wavelength, he found out this value. So this we have studied Nicol prism. So next, what are its uses? Uses, I told you that it can be used as a analyzer. This is a first one is called as polarizer and the second one is called as analyzer. So you can see that the first Nicol prism will polarize the light. The light will be vibrating only in one direction, and if the axis of this analyzer is parallel to the axis of this polarizer, then the same light it will pass through. By chance, if this rotates, then at one particular time what will happen? This will be perpendicular to this and no light will come out. So that we have to take care. That is how we use. So next topic is, we studied about quarter wave plate. Quarter wave plate is nothing but, as I told you, some thickness calcite plate is cut with its plane parallel to this optic axis. So such a small thickness plate is cut, and this plane polarized light, when it is passing through this calcite thickness crystal cut with its plane parallel to optic axis, again inside ordinary and extraordinary ray will be produced, and in due course of time this extraordinary will be moving faster than the ordinary, so there will be a phase difference between them. So if the thickness of the because extraordinary is moving faster than velocity of extraordinary is more than the velocity of ordinary, if the thickness of the crystal plate is such that it introduces a phase difference of pi by 2 radian or a path difference of lambda by 4, then it is called quarter wave plate. As far as the mathematics is concerned, suppose if T is the thickness of the plate, if mu O and mu E are the path are the refractive index of ordinary and extraordinary, the path difference between the extraordinary and ordinary will be mu O T minus mu E T, because mu O is greater than mu E. So it is mu O minus mu E into T is path difference. Now if this is equal to lambda by 4, then you can find out the thickness. T is equal to lambda by 4 mu O minus mu E. This is very important for competitive exam. Okay, in future your whether group exam or PG entrance exam and all, they will be asking this question. It is very important. Okay, similarly we find out this half wave plate. So half wave plate, if the thickness of the calcite crystal is cut with its face parallel to optic axis such that it introduces a phase difference of pi. You know na, phase difference is equal to 2 pi by lambda into path difference. So if the phase difference is pi, then what will be the path difference? 2 pi by lambda into path difference. Okay, so pi goes, so path difference will be equal to lambda by 2. Okay, this is a very important formula. In your earlier classes you have studied. Phase difference is equal to 2 pi by lambda into path difference. So if the thickness of the calcite crystal plate cut with its face parallel to optic axis is such that it introduces a phase difference of pi or part difference of lambda by 2 between ordinary and extraordinary wave, it is called a half wave plate. So in a similar manner you can write mu o t minus mu e t is equal to lambda by 2, or you can take common and t will be equal to this. Okay, so now you are using this particular plate to whether half wave plate or quarter wave plate, and you can use a Nicol prism and to produce an elliptically and circularly polarized light. Okay, one Nicol prism you take and the other Nicol prism you have to rotate, and then you have to see to it that at what angle this plane polarized light is entering the other crystal. So anyhow, so Nicol prism, you know, plane polarized light is produced, and suppose we follow this diagram. Suppose this calcite crystal is cut with its plane parallel to optic axis, and suppose this is x axis and this is y axis. So x axis is the direction of extraordinary, which vibration is in the plane section, and ordinary perpendicular to this x axis. Suppose its direction is let's say py, suppose in this direction, and this is px. So suppose this is the incident direction. Suppose a is the amplitude of the incoming wave which is passing through this calcite crystal. So this is plane polarized light is produced, and it enters a proper thickness cut calcite crystal whose plane is parallel to optic axis. Then inside the crystal, extraordinary and ordinary ray will be produced. Extraordinary ray is, let's say, in the x direction, ordinary ray will be in y direction. So let's say A is PQ is A, that is the maximum amplitude of incident light, and it makes an angle theta with the optic axis. So on emerging from the crystal, they have a phase difference del. Okay, so inside the crystal, you know, ordinary and extraordinary will be produced, and this extraordinary will be traveling faster than the ordinary. So in due course of time, there will be a phase difference, del will be there. Let's say phase difference is del, depending upon the thickness of the crystal. So here the case is just like your Lissajous figures. You have studied Lissajous figures, no, before. So to simple harmonic motion, when it is subjected to a particle, the path traced out by the particle will be simple closed curves, or it may be a straight line. So they are called Lissajous figures. In the similar manner, we have two simple harmonic motions having amplitudes a cos theta on x axis and a sin theta on y axis, vibrating along perpendicular directions, having a phase difference del. Then you have two equations as we have derived for Lissajous figures. X is equal to a cos theta is the amplitude, sin omega t plus del, and y is equal to a sin theta, again amplitude in the y direction, into sin omega t. If you take this as some small a and this as b, it will boil down to the same equation we have derived for simple harmonic motion, that is Lissajous figures. X is equal to a sin omega t plus del, y is equal to b sin omega t, and eliminate t between the two. You remember, no, sin omega t is equal to y by b, cos omega t is equal to square root of 1 minus y square by b square, and you have expanded x by a is equal to, you remember, no, y by b is equal to sin omega t, and then cos omega t will be equal to square root of 1 minus sin square omega t, that is 1 minus y square by b square, and then we have expanded this x by a is equal to sin a plus b formula, sin omega t cos del plus cos omega t sin del. If you substitute this value and eliminate t, you will be getting this equation. This is an oblique ellipse equation which you got for Lissajous figures also. X square by a square plus y square by b square minus 2xy by ab cos del and sin square del. So to produce this elliptically and circularly, we have a particular case we have to put. Means what will be the phase difference between ordinary and extraordinary. So now when del is equal to 0, Sin del will be 0, cos del will be 1. If you put in that particular equation, you will be getting this equation, and when you write in a compact form, it will be x by a minus y by b square is equal to 0. Taking square root on both sides, you will be getting y is equal to by. This is the equation of straight line passing through the origin. So the light will be then called as plane polarized light with vibration in the same plane as the incident light. Like this. This all diagram you are well versed with. Suppose del is equal to 2n plus 1 pi by 2, where n is equal to 0, 1, 2, then you will be getting del is equal to pi by 2, 3 pi by 2. Then you will be getting this equation. This is a perfect ellipse equation. So then you can say that it is elliptically polarized light. And further, with del is equal to pi by 2, del is equal to pi by 2, and if you put a is equal to b, then it boils down to x square plus y square a square. Then it will be emergent light will be circularly polarized light. So it will be like a, this will be like a ellipse. This will be like a ellipse when del is equal to only pi by 2 or any pi by 2. So it will be a ellipse, and additional condition, if you put a is equal to b, you will be getting a circle. So this is called circularly polarized light. Okay. Now up to here I taught you people, and then let me produce further. This is a new topic. This is called optical activity. Last topic which was left, last two topics. So optical activity, as I told you that suppose already we have produced plane polarized light. Suppose this is plane polarized light, and this plane polarized light, when it is passing through the what do you call, a tourmaline or some crystal, calcite crystal, then slowly what will happen, there will be rotation of this plane of plane polarized light. Like this, there will be a rotation. I told you, no, suppose if you put put clips on a string, and you put clips, and then some clips if you take and then you rotate, so one will be in one plane, another will be another plane. So this phenomena is called optical activity. That is rotating the plane of, there will be certain substances like quartz, sugar solution, sugar crystal, sugar in solution. In lab will be using sugar solution. This experiment is there in our lab. So we will be doing a sugar solution. It rotates the plane of vibration of plane polarized light when it is passing through them. So you can see in this quartz crystal, plane polarized light is incident with this plane vibration parallel to, only double arrows are there, and is slowly rotated about the direction of propagation. Inside, no, slowly rotation is there. So the emergent light of vibration are in some other plane. So this rotation of plane of vibrations can be demonstrated by following experiment. Now suppose this is one nickel prism. It is producing a plane polarized light. Now by chance, if you put the same nickel position in crossed position means its axis will be perpendicular. Suppose if this is the axis, this axis will be perpendicular to this axis. This particular axis will be perpendicular to this axis. Now this plane polarized light, that is plane in the vibration, that is extraordinary light, let's say, its vibration in the plane section of this paper, when it is passing through that, it will become ordinary ray, because it is placed in the cross position, and it will never come out. So this side will be dark. Now the trick is, same experiment, when this plane polarized light is coming out, a optically active substance, quartz crystal you put, then you will see that this side will not be dark. Means parallel to this axis, light will come out. This light will come out. It will not be dark. That means that this, because it is in cross position, okay, this will rotate the plane of plane polarized light so that it is parallel to this axis. This dot is like this, Now the dot is like this. Its cross position, this double arrow will become dot, but it will come out of this particular Nicol prism, which is kept in cross position, so that here some intensity of light you will get. It will not dark. So this experiment proves that this plane polarized light has been rotated. So whenever some optically active substance, when it rotates the plane of plane polarized light, rotation of some angle, then this phenomena is called as optical activity. Now there are some properties. Sometime what do you call, it will rotate. There are two types of substances which rotate the plane of polarization clockwise direction. It's called dextrorotatory or right-handedness. Some they rotate on the left side, that is called levorotatory. So when we are doing the experiment, we have to see whether it is right rotation or left rotation. And there are some other observation that we have to follow. The amount of rotation theta of plane polarized light is proportional to its length traverse. Means how much length it is traversing. More length means more rotation, less length means less rotation. And the amount of rotation for a given length is also proportional to concentration C of the solution. So in our lab now we make 3 concentrations. Suppose first concentration is 10 gram of sugar. 10 gram of sugar in a 100 ml solution. This is one concentration. Okay, 0.1 molar concentration, and then its rotation will be different. Will be suppose theta 1, and suppose we 50% we dilute it. This divided by 2, then the rotation will be different. So concentration rotation depends upon this rotation theta depends upon concentration C, directly proportional C. And it is also observed that rotation is inversely proportional to square of wavelength. These are all experimental result. Theta is inversely proportional to 1 by lambda square. So as you know that red is least deviated and violet is most deviated. So it is least for red and greatest for violet. And also suppose if you have 2-3 optically active substance together you are using in an experiment, then the total rotation will be sum of the rotation of individual optically active substance. So this is some of the properties. So if you put these properties in total, there is a very important phenomenon. It is called specific rotation. Specific rotation of a substance at a particular temperature and for a given wavelength of light, suppose lambda, and this temperature you make it fixed, may be defined as the rotation produced, that is plane of vibration of polarized light produced by 1 decimeter length of its solution when concentration is 1 gram per cc. So formula, no, as you know that S is directly proportional to theta and inversely proportional to length and what do you call concentration. Okay, so specific rotation is nothing but it is equal to theta by LC, because if you put C here, theta is directly proportional to C and L is also directly proportional to C. So specific rotation is theta by LC. Okay, but here we have to be very careful. This length of solution is in decimeter. Suppose if you convert into centimeter, decimeter to centimeter means you have to divide by 10. So the same formula will be S is equal to 10 theta by LC. You convert the decimeter length into centimeter. So you divide by 10. You know from left to right when you go you have to divide. So decimeter to centimeter you divide by 10. This 10 goes up, it will be 10 theta. So in our lab we will be using this. At some wavelength lambda and some temperature we will be using this formula. Okay, we know the concentration, we know length, and we also know theta. So we can find out specific rotation. You can either way you can use. Suppose theta is known, length is known, S is known, then you can find out the concentration. Suppose concentration is known, S is known, L is known, then you can find out theta. Okay, so this result we actually use to design. This result we use to design apparatus called as Lorentz half design a polarimeter, Lorentz half shade polarimeter. Why it is called half shade, that I will explain you. So basically polarimeter, they are the instrument designed to measure the angle of rotation produced by a substance. Okay, normally it will be a optically active substance. So when they are calibrated to read directly the percentage of sugar, cane sugar in a solution, they are named as saturometer. So in our lab, no, the saturometers are there. We have to do experiment using this. So polarimeter can be used to find the specific rotation of sugar solution, and if the specific rotation is known, they can be used to find the concentration. So this is the if you see inside the apparatus, these are all the parts are there. Okay, it is a compact device, but inside these are the parts. First you have a, let's say, monochromatic source. This is monochromatic source. It is rendered parallel by using a convex lens. You know, a convex lens will make the incident light parallel. Okay, so this parallel light falls at a Nicol prism. So Nicol prism, you know that it will make a plane, it will make a polarized light. It will produce a polarized light. That extraordinary will be totally internally reflected, and ordinary will be totally internally reflected, and extraordinary will come out. So this plane polarized light, okay, will fall on a half shade device. This is half shade device. Half shade means half, it is in the, now it is in the rectangle form, but actually inside it will be semicircle. Half is glass and other half is quartz. This half is quartz. Okay, so this is a half shade device. Half will be glass, half will be quartz, and we have to be very careful that the thickness of the glass and quartz is same amount of light it is absorbing. So light, when it is passing through a glass, nothing happens, but when it is passing through quartz, double refraction takes place. So already doubly refracted light is produced, and this is made to pass through. First it will be passed through a normal distilled water, but afterwards you have to keep here that sugar solution, sugar 1 molar solution or some concentration solution. So this light will fall on another Nicol. This is called analyzer, and this Nicol is actually fit into a telescope, and it has got some circular scale. This Nicol prism can be rotated, so its axis can be rotated into a circular plane, and you have to observe the phenomena which is going on this inside this half shade device. Okay, so here this Nicol prism is attached to a telescope, and its plane, its crystallographic plane can be rotated, and that rotation can be measured with the help of one circular scale. Now let us follow what happens. Action of half shade. Now suppose the direction of the incident plane polarized light is in this direction. Suppose PQ direction. Incident light is in the direction of PQ. Okay. Now, and glass will allow this plane polarized light to pass through, and suppose the direction of light passing through glass is also PQ. But when this plane polarized light passes through this quartz, double refraction takes place. One refraction is along x-axis. Okay, along x-axis, suppose x-axis ordinary and y-axis extraordinary. Okay, so doubly it will be refracted.
Suppose you take a quartz, so ordinary ray will be in the direction of x and extraordinary will be in the direction of y. And suppose the resultant is in this direction. OP is the resultant of this OM and OL, let's say. We restrict the vector up to here. This is extraordinary wave and this is ordinary wave amplitude, let's say. So this is the resultant. Now what happens is, when it is passing through this quartz, this ordinary ray will be moving with velocity, because it is a positive crystal, its velocity will be more than the extraordinary. And what phase difference will take place, and this vector OM will be taking this particular direction. It will be inverted and it will be moving in this direction. Vector, it will be moving in the opposite direction. Suppose ON is this direction. So ON is the direction after the light is passing through the quartz crystal, and this is extraordinary direction. So the resultant will be in the direction of OR. So RS is the plane polarized light when it is passing through the quartz crystal. Okay, so now we have divided the light into two halves. Now suppose this analyzer ka axis, Nicol prism N2, suppose when you keep its axis parallel to this QP, then what will happen is, the glass side, it will allow the light to pass through. So this will be bright, this side will be dark, on the other side will be dark. Similarly, if the axis of this Nicol prism, because you can rotate this Nicol prism, the axis of this Nicol prism, if you keep in the direction of RS, then what will happen? Light from this glass side will be obstructed. This side, it will from quartz side, light will be allowed. This plane polarized light will be allowed. So this side will be bright, this side will be dark. But when you keep the axis of this analyzer exactly bifurcating the two, is ADC and ABC, we keep the axis of the analyzer in the direction of AC, both sides will be equally bright. Okay, now about the experiment. First what you do is, this tube, it is bulging here. Why it is bulging here? Because this side, one side will be closed, other side you can open it. You have to fill water. First you have to fill with distilled water. Distilled water will be given in lab. Distilled water you fill. So some bubble will be forming inside this tube. That bubble will rest here, because bubble should not be in the path of the incident light. So bubble will come and rest. Okay. So now first what you do, you keep distilled water inside the tube. This tube length can be, physically you can find out the tube length with the help of a scale. And you keep distilled water inside, and then you rotate this Nicol prism analyzer such that both half will be equally bright. Both half means this half and this half will be equally bright. Then you measure theta 1, let's say. Then you remove the distilled water, and second you put optically active substance. Optically active substance, I told you, sugar solution, quartz and all those. Then what it will do is, now both the half is equally bright, at a particular position, at particular angle. The moment you put this sugar solution, optically active substance, in the lab we use sugar solution, 1 molar or some molar sugar solution. Immediately at the same position, when you see the telescope, both the halves are not equally bright. Some darkness will be there. This half and that half, it will be slightly dark. Okay. Then what you do? You again rotate this telescope ka micrometer eyepiece, you rotate. such that you again come to the original position, because original position both side was bright, starting both side was bright with distilled water. You measured theta 1, then you load optically active substance, then immediately what will happen, it will rotate the plane of this plane polarized light. So this side there will be a darkness, extraordinary will become ordinary and it will be darkness. So then what you do, physically you rotate such that again both sides will be equally bright, and then you measure angle theta 2. So theta 2 minus theta 1 will give you theta. So amount of rotation of optically active substance. So in the experiment, first is your concentration, 1 molar or half molar, and then you already measured theta 1, now you measured theta 2, and then last column, then you do theta is equal to theta 2 minus theta 1. Last column mein you measure specific rotatory power, S is equal to theta by L into C. You know theta, you know L, you know C, so you can find out S, and then you can plot a graph between let's say S on y axis, theta on x axis. So you get a straight line, you can find out slope. Also from slope you can find out del S here and del theta here. Again from graph you can find out specific rotatory power at some wavelength and temperature to be 10 into d theta by, okay, ds by d theta. Or suppose if you take this as theta, this as L, this as your S, okay, then this will be your del theta, this will be your del S, and then you can substitute the formula del theta by del S and you will get specific rotating power. Or if this is S and this is theta, then inversely proportional you have to substitute. Okay, so this is this is a very very important device which is used in all distilleries and all drug industry. You will find this in Dr. Reddy lab or any distilleries you go, you will be finding this apparatus. Very very important. Okay, now the last topic is from the book only I will explain. It is about Babinet compensator. See, Babinet compensator, as I told you, compensator means it compensates. See, when we are studying quarter wave plate, for a particular thickness only we got the value. Quarter wave plate we got the value to be T is equal to lambda by 4 into mu O minus mu E for a particular wavelength. So quarter wave plate you can for a particular wavelength there is a particular thickness. So while discussing quarter wave plate of half wave plate, the precaution is followed that this incident light should be monochromatic light. But sometimes if the incident light is not monochromatic, wavelength is changing, then how to find out the thickness of quarter wave plate or half wave plate? So Babinet designed this compensator. So these are the two wedge shaped crystal cut, quartz crystal cut. Wedge shaped means this is one angle, this is one angle. Suppose this is one cut like this. Okay, two right angle triangle, two wedge, two separate wedge. You can separate this out, and same angle. This angle will be equal to this angle. This angle will be equal to this angle. So this wedge shaped film, wedge shaped cut is joined at this AC. Okay. So we are able to use this device for all wavelengths. So little mathematical applications you have to apply here. Here carefully if you notice, this particular wedge, suppose the crystallographic axis is perpendicular to the incident light. Suppose this is the incident light. So this axis is perpendicular, this optic axis of this quartz crystal is perpendicular to this incident light, but for this particular wedge it is parallel. Okay, and also another thing is, one screw is attached to this. That means you can move this up and down so that this thickness will be adjusted. Suppose at this particular position, this thickness, suppose this center thickness and this thickness is same, but moving this up and down, as the incident wavelength, as the incident light wavelength is changing, thickness also we have to change, so that we can use as a quarter wave plate and half wave plate for other experiment. So here what is happening is, suppose when a plane polarized light enters through this quartz edge, then it will be extraordinary and ordinary ray will be produced. So here what is happening? Ordinary ray will move faster than the extraordinary ray. But when the same ray passes through this wedge, then what will happen? The refractive index will interchange, velocity will interchange. The extraordinary ray will become ordinary ray here, and the ordinary ray, when it comes to extraordinary, will become ordinary will become extraordinary, extraordinary will become ordinary. So what is the use of that? Suppose, let's say first center, no, thickness T1 we take. Suppose the thickness is T1. So if mu E and mu O be the refractive indices of the quartz for extraordinary and ordinary ray, and T1 and T2 is the thickness of the two wedge respectively traversed by the particular ray, the path difference introduced by the two components will be mu E minus mu O, because I told you refractive index of ordinary is velocity is more than the extraordinary, so refractive index is inversely proportional, mu E minus mu O into T1. Okay, and corresponding phase difference del 1 is equal to 2 pi by lambda into this path difference. Okay, now next, when the same light is passing through the second wedge, okay, then what will happen is further the path difference introduced further the path difference introduced between the two components by the second wedge will be mu E minus mu O into T2. Let's say T2 is the thickness. Okay, so if you up to here you follow. Okay, now the total path difference, resultant path difference, the total path difference between the incident light when plane polarized light, when it is passing through this Babnet compensator, of course here ordinary extraordinary, here also ordinary extraordinary, but since its crystallographic axis is perpendicular here and parallel here, so ordinary will become extraordinary here, extraordinary will become ordinary, and as you know that their velocity will interchange. So the resultant phase difference will be del 1 plus del 2. This is the resultant phase difference. This is in the first wedge of thickness T1 and this is in the second wedge thickness T2. Now here little mathematical jugglery. You take minus outside. When you take minus outside, it will become mu E minus mu O. Same expression, just you take minus outside. So therefore, and if you take mu E minus mu O common, then you will be getting the path difference as 2 pi by lambda mu E minus mu O T1 minus T2. So this is the formula which you have to follow, which you have to apply when different wavelength of incident light is falling at this Babnet compensator will compensate it. That is, instead of each wavelength one thickness cut of calcite crystal, the same calcite crystal we can use, but by adjusting this screw up and down, we can adjust the thickness. So each time you find out the thickness here and thickness here, and then put it in this formula. Okay, so and then you can find out the phase difference between the two. So at the center of the compensator, where T1 is equal to T2, this is equal to the resultant path difference will be 0. Hence phase difference will also be 0. In this case, the emergent light for the compensator is plane polarized light in the original plane. So by moving the second wedge relative to the first, any desired value T1 minus T2 can be anything. Suppose if you move this up or move this down, at a same position the thickness will vary, can be arranged at the same center of the compensator. Hence the path difference and consequently the phase difference can be made of any desired value. Thus the elliptically polarized light can be obtained using the help of this Babnet compensator. So with this, dear students, I have finished 4th unit and also I have done the revision of 4th unit. Okay, so prepare well and then we will move into, I will again upload the videos of 5th unit. Okay, wish you all the best.